Hey guys, True Grit's got bulletproof saws. I got hit on my Facebook, on Bulletproof Saws on Facebook, about my video on pressing cases together. A lot of you guys like that video, and I gotta tell you, I got the idea, which is sad, and I think I said it in the other video, from William Prophet. He does a lot of chainsaw milling, good saw guy. And he used a drill press to press cases together. I have 5 drill presses. It's not like, and I've used them, here's the worst part. I've used them to press things together before, but somehow I never put 2 and 2 together to press my cases together with it. So once I started doing that, it's by far the easiest, quickest way. And a lot of guys have drill presses, and if you don't, you can find even a bench top drill press would work. And you could go to boot sales, garage sales, flea markets, and to be honest with you, I've found beautiful old Delta drill presses for, I've seen them for 60 bucks. I've seen them for a few $100, and it varies, but I see these things for sale, and it's a great piece of kit to have in a shop if you don't, and they're super nice to press cases together with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you why I'm remaking this video. The reason I'm remaking the video is a lot of guys said, hey, you did that, you've done 10,000 of these things, and you do it so quick, maybe you could take a little time and explain something for once. Your quick videos are great, but can you go in depth a little bit more? So yeah, I will. And guys, I have Bulletproof Saws on Facebook. You can hit me through there, message me, whatever. Or you can hit me on YouTube, but to be honest with you, for messaging and going back and forth, Facebook's the better place to hit me on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause you guys. I'm going to zoom you in. I'm going to just talk about a few things with pressing cases, case halves, whatever. Hold on a second, guys. Okay, guys, first things first. I'll start here. When I'm pressing case halves together, I much prefer to press in the flywheel side first, and I like to make sure that I have the locator pins in this side. Occasionally, if you're doing a kit saw, the locator pins are going to pop out, and they might be into the PTO side, and all you have to do is take a punch and punch them back out and pop them in here. Maybe you could pull them out, but a lot of times I'll just punch them right out and throw them in here. Another thing to pay attention to, I do not use gasket sealer on case halves. A lot of guys do. They say it's extra insurance, whatever. I don't see the need to, except there's a couple instances where I will. If the case has been split before and somebody wasn't real nice splitting it, maybe they used a screwdriver, and I'll go into that, and they chipped away something or there's some kind of defects in it, I'll use, some 3-bond on it. Or the other time that I like to use it is sometimes you'll get gaskets, and depending on who made the gasket, some of them might be crumpled up and kind of weird and off, and you can't get them to sit perfectly over the holes. Now, granted, this one's sitting really nicely over the holes, but sometimes you'll have one that just, it's cocked. And when you press them cases together, it's going to, be covering the bolt holes. So then I'll tack 3-bond around it, and I'll put it and I'll position it so it's absolutely perfect. But those are the only cases that I really use gasket maker on any of these. The other thing that I'll tell you is when these cases are together, let's see if we can get these together real quick. Wow. When they're together, sometimes they don't want to just pull apart, and you can't wiggle them apart like that, and they're almost like they're stuck. So with that, I see guys do all sorts of stuff. I see them trying to, if there's not a gap, they're trying to hammer screwdrivers in, and that's where you chip these things. I use a razor knife, and I find this to be the best tool because the blades are usually decent metal. They don't break so darn easy. They're not the strongest thing in the world. I'm not saying that, but you could weasel them in there real nice, and what I'll do is I'll twist it a little bit on this side, twist it a little bit on this side till I get the case apart without damaging it. The other thing I'm going to tell you when you're pulling these cases apart is you have to be really, really careful not to, I see guys ripping on one end. If you torque this and you start getting a gap over here and it's still sealed up over there, you have a real good chance of that pin breaking your magnesium on your case. So be real careful when you're separating these not to ruin them. I think those are all the things, and I'm going to bring us, I'll pause this and I'll bring us over to the press so we can take a look at how I press these together. And it's nothing, it's no real big thing. I'll talk to you about it for a second here. Let me pause you. Okay guys, and there's a bunch of methods to doing this. You could use a press, you can use the hot-cold method, you can use both 8-fleet command. Walt makes a nice puller to pull them into the cases. Matty Olson makes one too. Last I knew, I haven't checked in a while. It's a nice method and it works really well. The reason I don't use it is because with the drill press, it literally takes me 1 minute at best to press cases together, and I watch guys doing it the other way and it just takes longer, so I don't do it that way. But there's probably some benefits in some cases where maybe you'd like to do it that way. I just don't. I don't love the hot and cold method. I don't use it. I've never used it, and the reason why is I see a lot of guys, they'll heat up the cases and then they'll go to press in the crank and the bearing pops out. And I've seen a lot of guys, you know, getting frustrated with that. So I don't overly love the hot-cold method. But what I do is, you know, in the winter I have a wood stove going down here in the shop. And that wood stove, I'll throw these cases on a metal screen thing that I could set on top so they're not directly on the wood stove, and the cases get warm. And I do throw the cranks in the freezer, and I'll throw them in the freezer overnight just to cool them off. Do I have to? Probably not. Does it make it go a little easier? I like to think so. I haven't really tested. Actually, I have. And they press just as nice on the drill press without heating and cooling them. I just think it's a little bit easier to get that little bit of metal contraction on the frozen crank and expansion on the case. But I'm not heating it so much that where the bearings want to fall out. So I'm not saying I'm crazy scientific with it, but it's nice how quick that works. What I also do is I'll throw 2-cycle oil. I'll get the inside of that bearing really good, and I'll get the inside of that one, and I'll even throw 2-cycle oil on the crank. And I'll throw the 2-cycle oil on the case. You'll see me throw the 2-cycle oil on the crank right before I press it, and I'll show you. So I'm going to pause you guys, and I'll take you over to where I'm pressing cranks. Okay guys, I hope this is a good enough angle. Got you over here at the drill press, and I got my crank out of the freezer, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set my flywheel side case down. Now one of the things, hopefully this is in video, is you have this over here. So you have to have that hanging off for this to lay flat, and different cases are set up different ways, and you might have to do different things to make sure that that case is laying flat. I already put a little bit of 2-stroke oil on the inside of the bearing, and then I grab my crank and I try not to touch too much where I'm going to be pressing, because I'm sure all the cold goes out of it just as quick as it could. So I throw my 2-stroke oil on it. I make sure this is down so it mates up on here good, because if I didn't have the chuck all the way down, it wouldn't be flat for me to press this part. And you'll see on the next part, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I try to make sure that I'm halfway centered. I kneel down, and I might have this down too far because I was messing around with it. And we're in. And I'll take some 2-stroke oil. Try not to forget about the gasket here as I'm doing this. A lot of times I'll have that gasket on before I start doing this part. I'll slather through some 2-stroke on this. Now those case halves weren't even warm this time, so that was cold. Let me get that out of the way. I'll slide this back. I'll grab my other case half. Oh, and we almost forgot the gasket anyway. Let's balance that up there. Also didn't show it on video, but I take my time and I clean these cases out really, really well. We've had that conversation before, whether those magnesium chips and all the swarf that you're going to find in them really causes a problem, but I don't want it in there on my builds. So I make sure I get it out of there. Here's the hard part for me, is seeing well enough with my light that I have to hit those locator pins. Make sure you have your socket or whatever you're going to use to press down on there. I actually have a bunch of these labeled. Now I need it flat to press on the end of that socket. I think we're lined up. If we're not, we'll explode this case and you guys can laugh. Ah, done. We were lined up. That's it. That case is pressed together. I'll show you a couple more things with making sure that the crank's centered and all that kind of stuff. So I'll pause you guys real quick and I'll show you the next step. Okay guys, our case is together. I'm still gonna have to press in seals, but the next thing that you have to do after this, before you center the crank, make sure you put in your case bolts. There's 5 case bolts on this 460. I'll make sure they're all in. They're orange Loctited in. We went through that. I keep my orange Loctite in a syringe so I don't waste 5 gallons of it when it's $25 or $30 for the big jug of it, big tube of it. And I'll throw these case bolts in. I don't think I need to do that part on video. I'll pause you guys and then I'll show you how I center the crank real quick and easy, because I know a lot of guys get insanely overcomplicated on centering the crank. They're taking, matchbook covers and putting them in. They're taking feeler gauges. They're doing this whole thing centering the crank, which, listen, we want our crank centered. We don't want it off center. And to be honest with you, you could have that crank knocked to one side so much where it won't spin. Or you could have it knocked to one side. So say it was knocked in from the PTO side over towards the clutch side, where it gives you a problem where you can't get, you have everything put together, you have your whole stack on, you have your clutch on, you have your clutch drum on, you have your sprocket on, and then you have your E-clip that holds that sprocket in. And if you've ever had it where you couldn't get that E-clip out of there, especially, I don't think I have one handy. I wish I did. I should have. All right, I have the other kind handy. You have this on your clutch, but there's also the ones with the recess, the black ones that really hold that E-clip, and I like them better than these. And you have it on there, and it's so tight that you can't get that E-clip out of there. Well, a lot of times it's somebody might have put too much gasket maker around that gasket and made the cases too fat. One of the reasons I don't use it, although with 3-bond, you could really go so thin that I don't see how somebody could make a mistake, but I've seen people go crazy with gasket maker and really build up some gasket maker that it throws things off. So what will happen is you can't get that E-clip out of there, and it might be simply that your crank isn't centered enough, or it's forced over towards the flywheel side. So I'm gonna throwing stuff. I'm gonna pause you guys and I'll put those bolts in, and then I'll show you how I center it real quick. And it's no rocket science here either, guys. Okay guys, I popped those case bolts in, and I guess I'll talk about this real quick. As I do them, you got 3, 4, and 5. Do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I'll tighten them. Then I'll go back through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll tighten them down a little more. And then I'll give my final torque 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The point that I'm trying to make is I don't whale this one in and then maybe whale that one in. I try to do it evenly. In case the case isn't totally pressed together, it will suck the case in together, so that's helpful. But here's what I want to show you on centering the crank. When you have that, you have the flywheel, or the crank rather, turned, I like to pull it back here because the cases, this is a little higher than this. This has more of a curve than this. It's hard to see where you're at with this. And I think you guys can see on video, and I hope you can, that I have this way close, almost touching to the PTO side. The way I fix that is with a little brass hammer. I call it little brassy because I use it for a lot of different things. And the reason you use a brass hammer for something, yeah, I know it's hammered. It's, you know, 50, 70 years old and pretty beat up. I could probably use to surface the faces. The reason I use this is because I'm not going to mushroom out that steel, because the steel's a little bit harder than the brass is. The steel's a lot harder than the brass. The brass is made to mushroom down. If you don't know that, I'm sure everybody knows that already. And I'll give it a couple pops until I am, and listen, I give these guys a good look. I'll look at the lobes up here where I could see if it's even on the sides. Because if you just do this, it could really fake you out with which side it's favoring. And if I was going to favor any side, I'd probably have it a little shifted towards the PTO side, just so you don't run into that problem with the E-clip. Perfectly centered, you could get out your feeler gauges and you could double check how close you are. I could see by eye if I'm 100 thousandths off. I'd be surprised on this, and I'll give you guys a look, and maybe you could see, maybe you can't see. But they're pretty darn even in real life. Don't know how it's showing up on the camera. Another thing you're going to see is I label every case before I put them together, because if I'm doing 3, 4, or 5 of these at a time, I don't want to mix up case halves from one kit to the next kit. I'll pause you and talk about this. Okay guys, so what I was saying is the cases, if I'm doing 5 kits or 3 kits or any more than one kit at a time, I can't be guaranteed if I start mixing and matching case halves. If I take the PTO side off of this one and put it on the flywheel side of this one, I can't be 100% certain that this surface is going to be machined equally on all of them. And I've seen people that, I don't know what happens, maybe Farmertec or one of the clone saw manufacturers gets a case broken and they substitute it, but I've seen it where these surfaces can be off, where your cylinder's going to sit down. And that's a problem, and a chisel's not going to fix it. You guys know the ongoing joke with chiseling down case halves to make them match. Anyhow, that's not going to fix it, so I label them. You know, this is A and A, B and B. That way I'm putting together the same cases, and I'm not going to have a problem with the machining being mismatched on the deck where my cylinder's going to sit. I think that's everything I can tell you about pressing together cases with a drill press. It goes quick, it goes easy. It's not bad. I also got requests to remake my chain brake video because I went through it quick and it was really hard for me. Generally I have a tripod sitting right here facing down and I'm working here, or I'll take my stool here and I'll put the tripod on this with the camera facing it, and I'll try to reach around it, which isn't the most elegant solution to filming it. So, not being a camera expert here, guys, or a video expert I should say, I'm going to try maybe setting the camera up on the opposite side and videoing down. That way I'm not in the way of the camera, and maybe you can see everything as I do those chain brakes. Because the truth is, a chain brake should take you all of 3 minutes to do. And the 3 minutes, the reason it takes that long is because you're fiddling with little tiny E-clips and little tiny springs, and maybe you guys have more dexterity in your hands than I do, but it takes me a minute to do them, and it's only because of my meat hooks not working real good. Anyhow guys, that's enough for this video. It's probably very long for something that's very quick. Anyhow, True Grit Scott, Bulletproof Saws on Facebook, on YouTube. Send me a comment, send me a message. Be safe out there. Thanks for watching.